Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones with the latest headlines for viewers in the UK and around the world. 6 years of Donald Trump's tax returns are finally released after the former president lost a long legal battle to keep them secret.
It's truly appalling that the President of the United States had so little commitment to paying for our national security and other vital services that he thought it was okay for him to pay $750 a couple of years and some years absolutely nothing.
The UK joins a growing list of countries imposing new COVID restrictions on arrivals from China. England will require a negative pre-departure test from next week. Controversial online influencer Andrew Tate is remanded in custody in Romania as part of an investigation into allegations of human trafficking and rape. And Brazil lights up in honour of Pelé on the first of 3 days of national mourning for the footballing legend. Queen guitarist Brian May is among those receiving awards in the New Year's Honours List. He's knighted for services to music and charity. Hello, welcome if you're watching here in the UK or around the world. First this hour, a US congressional committee has released 6 years of tax returns of the former President Donald Trump. Now, Trump battled for years to try and keep these documents secret until the Supreme Court approved their disclosure last month. The returns showed that in 2020, he paid nothing in federal income taxes. The former president has released a video condemning the release of these documents.
Although these tax returns contain relatively little information and not information that almost anybody would understand, they're extremely complex. The radical Democrats' behavior is a shame upon the U.S. Congress.
Well, earlier I spoke to Lloyd Doggett, a Democratic Party congressman and a member of the Ways and Means Committee. He gave me his reaction to the revelations in Trump's tax returns.
He didn't pay at the rate of a janitor or a sanitation worker. He paid nothing some years.
But what if that was just because his businesses weren't making any money?
Well, therein lies a big part of the problem with the failure of the Trump Internal Revenue Service to investigate and audit him thoroughly. We have about as many questions as we have answers. What we know from a New York Times investigation is that in 2009, he claimed a loss of $700 million, apparently associated with his failed Atlantic City casinos. And he continued to carry that along, apparently. And at the beginning of 2015, he was still claiming a loss of $105 million. So by using creative losses, credits, deductions that were never thoroughly analyzed, he was able to avoid paying taxes.
Well, is that the fault? Isn't that the fault of the system, of legislators like yourself, to try and simplify and make sure people can't use different methods if you don't like them?
You know, much of it is absolutely the fault of a Congress that seems to be dominated by the super rich too often and large multinational corporations. And had the IRS done its job of thoroughly auditing, we could determine if this is just Trump, like many other ultra-rich people, avoiding their fair share of taxes, or whether there was fraud that was committed here. We can't really tell that from what we have. The committee's inquiry was narrow. It only explored 8 of some 500 Trump business entities. The committee never was able to talk with anyone at the Internal Revenue Service, so we only have the electronic records. There's much more out there, but I think we have reason to complain when the Internal Revenue Service failed to do for Trump under his administration what the Internal Revenue Service has done with all our presidents going back to Nixon.
Right. What about the people who will say, listen, you're a Democrat, Donald Trump is a political opponent, this is a political and a politically motivated exposing of his tax returns?
Well, I think that our investigation shows, and it was targeted toward finding out if the presidential audit system was working, that it failed. and that for people to have confidence in the extent to which it failed, they need to see the returns. But, you know, that kind of argument is just part of the Republican cover-up effort. They blocked my motion for 2 years to get the returns, and then a Trump-appointed judge held the case for years in addition to that. I think their opposition is really weak, but if they want more investigation of the way the Internal Revenue Service did this job or failed to do it, I'm all for it.
OK, just briefly, before I let you go, what do you make of Donald Trump's reaction to the release of these documents?
Typical Trump, evading his failure to pay his fair share of taxes and trying to blame others. There's nothing about this that applies to the tax returns of ordinary Americans. The President of the United States is unique in his situation, in his power, in his ability to affect what goes on in our government and the world, and he should have been subject to the same audit that applies now to Joe Biden and applied to many presidents before America ever had the misfortune of Trump becoming president.
Thanks to Congressman Lloyd Doggett for talking to me a little earlier. Next, passengers arriving in England from